Hi guys, sorry, camera's still not working, which is probably a good thing, as I said, that you don't get to see my face. So now we are going to look at the very last part of the shipwreck of Zanzibar. What an exciting part we just had. A ship called the Zanzibar wrecked on Briar, and they managed to get out in the gig, and she managed to row in the gig, which was her dream. And then they found Billy. So lots of positive things have just happened, which is great because it was getting to be a very negative story up to that point. But I wonder what might happen. Let's see. December the 10th. When I woke up this morning, I thought yesterday must be a dream. I had to go into Billy's room to be quite sure it wasn't. He was still asleep. He sleeps like a baby, like he always did, with his finger alongside his nose. The wind has dropped. From his window, I watched the sea dancing in the morning light. Father was on his way out when I got downstairs, leaning on a stick and limping, but beaming up at me. "The Zanzibar," he said. "She's still on the rocks. What's left of her, but she won't be there for long. We're going out to see what we can take off." Father tried to stop him, but he wouldn't listen. I tried to go with him, but Mother wouldn't have it. She stood between me and the door, took hold of me, and sat me down firmly. Later on, I went up Samson Hill with Mother, leaving Billy and Granny May still asleep. Every boat from Briar was out around White Island. The wreck was high on the rocks, only her prow hidden under the water, her sails in tatters. There were men crawling all over her like ants. As we watched, we saw the gig pulling slowly away from the White Island. She was low in the water. There was laughter across the sea. As the gig came into Rushy Bay below us, I saw something lashed to either side of her. Mother could not make out what it was, and neither could I. The crew snipped their oars some way from shore and let the gig come in slowly on her own. Then I saw the chief and old man Jenkins leaning out over the side. They had knives in their hands and they were cutting at the ropes. "Cows!" someone said. And at that moment, amid great splashing and whooping from the gig, 6 cows came out of the sea and came gaboling up onto the beach. "Well, I'll be beggared," said Mother. The crew leapt out after them and then began a great cow chase all over Rushy Bay, Father waving his stick at everyone and shouting. In the end, it was difficult to say who was chasing who. We all ran down Sanson Hill to help and drove them up over the dunes onto the green where they settled at last to graze. Father, all breathless, leaned on his stick and shook his head. "Well," he said, "would you believe it? There was a lot more than cows on that wreck." All afternoon, the boats came back and forth, loaded to the gunwales with timber, with corn, with brandy. Billy was up by now, and along with all the other rescued sailors from the Zanzibar, he lent a hand. By this evening, the beach on Rushy Bay was littered with piles of loot. Every family had their own pile, and we ferried it all back home in donkey carts. We had prayed for a wreck, and a wreck had come, and what a wreck. That a miracle had happened, no one doubts. There is wood enough to rebuild our battered houses and to rebuild or replace our ruined boats. There are cows to give us milk, all the corn we need to feed us and them through the winter, and there'll be enough over for seed next spring, and brandy enough, Father says, to keep us all happy forever. Granny May insisted we get her up. She keeps touching Billy to make sure he's real. She took some soup, the first she'd eaten for days, and then she made us take it over to Rushy Bay to see the wreck. She couldn't walk, so Billy and his friends from the Zanzibar pulled her across the island in the back of a cart as the donkeys were still busy. She was beside me this evening at high tide when we heard the Zanzibar groan. Everyone was there to watch her go. We watched her sink slowly into the sea, her shredded sails whipping in the wind, waving at us. I waved back in silence. The crew took off their hats. Some crossed themselves, and one of them fell on his knees in the sand and thanked God. Then we all knelt with him, except Granny May, I noticed. "We're staying. Everyone's staying. Billy's staying." He said so. He promised. He crossed his heart and hoped to die. He's been all over the world. America, Ireland, France, Spain, Africa even. Imagine that. I asked about Joseph Hannibal. It seems he didn't quite turn out as Billy had expected. He drank a lot. He borrowed Billy's money and never gave it back. And when Billy asked him for it, he threatened him. So Billy left the General Lee in New York and came a cabin boy in Zanzibar. It was the Zanzibar that had taken him all over the world. Billy says there are beautiful places in the world. Wonders you wouldn't believe unless you saw them with your own eyes. But that there's nowhere else in the world quite like Scilly, nowhere like home. I told him I knew that already, and Father said there's some things you've got to find out for yourself, and Billy and he smiled at each other. December the 24th. I'm milking the Zanzibar cows and with Billy too. 3 of the 6 are in milk and we think the others may be in calf. Let's hope. Everyone had most of what they want off the wreck. There's been some grumbles, of course, but it's been fair shares. We got the cows because we're the only ones who know how to handle them. We got some corn too, everyone did. We've built a cow shed just as it was. Granny May has enough wood for her roof. There's timber stacked up in the gardens all over the island. There's boats being mended, roofs going on, and everyone everywhere is hammering and sawing. Briar is alive again. Granny May will probably be with us until the spring, till her house is ready. She's the same now as she ever was, scuttling about the place and muttering to herself. Sometimes I think she is a mad old stick, as everyone says she is. She keeps telling me it wasn't God that brought that wreck that brought Billy back to us. It was the turtle. She rambles on and on about how there's no such thing as a miracle. If something happens, and something has made it happen. A law of nature, she says. We saved the turtle, and so the turtle saved us. It's that simple. You get what you deserve in this world, she says. I don't know that she's right. I've told Billy all about the turtle. He says if he'd found it, he'd have eaten it, but he wouldn't have. He's just saying that. We talk and talk. We've hardly stopped talking since he came back. I've heard his stories over and over, but I want to hear them again and again. I know them all so well. It's as if I was with him all the time he was away. As if I'd been to America and Africa. As if I've seen for myself the great cities, the deserts that go on forever and icebergs and mountains that reach up and touch the sky. The crew of the Zanzibar left from the quay this evening, where we were there to wave them off. Everyone hugged everyone. They were so happy to be alive and grateful, and to us for saving them. Since he's been back, Billy hasn't had a cross word with Father, and Mother is my mother again. December the 25th, Boxing Day, Christmas Day. It seems Granny might have been right after all. I was with Billy cleaning out the cowshed after church when he called me outside. Everyone seemed to be running down towards Green Bay, and there was a crowd gathered round on the beach. So we left everything and ran. We met Mother and Granny May coming up to the house. There's been a dead turtle washed up, said Mother. Granny May looked at me, her eyes full of tears. We had to push through the crowd. People were laughing. I hated them for that. He was covered in sand and seaweed, and they were trying to roll him over, but he was too heavy, even for them. Then I looked again. It was a turtle, all right, but it was not our turtle. It wasn't any turtle at all. It was painted bright green with yellow eyes, and it looked as if it had been carved out of wood. It was the figurehead of a ship. Billy crouched down beside it and brushed sand off his face. That's off to Zanzibar, he said. Granny May was laughing through her tears. She took my hand and squeezed it. Now do you believe me, she said. She didn't even answer. It's off Billy's ship, she went on, and then it belongs to Billy, doesn't it? No one argued with her. We'll call him Zanzibar and he can live in the garden. Let's get him home. So we heaved him up onto the cart and trundled him home. All afternoon we scrubbed. A lot of his paint had come off in the sea. He's a little bigger than our turtle was, but his face is just the same, white, wizened, wrinkled, and wise like a 200-year-old man. And he smiles just the same too, gently. I'm looking out of my window as I write this. He looks as if he's trying to eat the grass. He won't, of course. He'll only eat jellyfish. Zanzibar is a good name for him. The right name, I think. On the last page, she had written in ink in the wobbly handwriting of an old lady. P.S. One last thing. I'm not leaving Zanzibar to anyone. I'm not to anyone. I'm leaving him to everyone. So I want him put out on the green so all the children of Briar can sit on him whenever they like. They can ride him whenever they like. He can be a horse, a dragon, a dolphin, an elephant, or even a leatherback turtle. And as you know, your great Uncle Billy lived a good long life. And when he died, I didn't know how I'd manage without him. But I did, because I had to anyway. We're together again now. Marzipan. Now, guys, we're going back to the beginning of the story here, which is when the granddaughter has finished reading the diary, and that at her funeral. Remember? So we've gone back in time, and now we've travelled ahead into the future. I sat there on the bed for some moments, looking at the great Aunt Laura's drawings of the Zanzibar and the green, gazing out to sea. Sitting astride him is a small girl. the wind in her hair, and she's laughing out of sheer joy. From outside the window, I've heard peals of laughter. I leaned out. There must have been half a dozen little nieces and nephews down in the garden and clambering all over Zanzibar. The smallest of them, Catherine, it was, my youngest niece, was offering Zanzibar some grass and stroking his head. Come on, Marzipan, she was saying, you'll like it. He won't eat it, I called down. He only eats jellyfish. She looked up at me, squinting in the sun. How do you know? She asked. If you let me sit on him, I said, I'll tell you where Zanzibar came from, how we got here, everything. All right, she said. So sitting on the Zanzibar in the evening sun, I read in Great Aunt Laura's diary from the beginning to the end. By the time I'd finished, the entire family was gathered around Zanzibar and listening. I closed the book. That's it, I said. No one spoke for some time. It was Catherine's idea that we should move Zanzibar right away. So we fetched Great Aunt Laura's rickety cart out of her shed, loaded up Zanzibar and hauled him along the rutty track to the green. I knew from the last drawing in the diary exactly where she wanted him put, and that's where we left him, gazing out to sea. When I looked back, there were gulls circling above him. Some had landed on his back and on his head. Catherine was running at them, waving her arms and shouting, "Shoo!" she cried, "Shoo!" They flew off protesting, and Catherine caught us up. Anyway, it doesn't matter, does it? She said. They can't eat them, can they? Marzipan's made of wood. Zanzibar. He's called Zanzibar. That's what I said. And they skipped off after the others. Wow, guys. So we've come to the end of the story. What a happy ending. I thought at one point that the ending wasn't going to be that happy. And what a really well-written short story. Michael Morpurgo is a very, very talented author. You should read more of his books when you come back to school next week. We have lots in year 3. And thanks for listening, guys. And as I said, there'll be one more story to listen to this week, as it is book week. And we will see you all next week. Thanks, guys.